Stones of Power, an hour-long journey through European castle history. A gripping tale of ambition, innovation, and survival carved in stone. Journey through 5 centuries of medieval Europe, where desperate lords raised wooden towers on artificial hills, visionary kings standardized stone fortresses to reclaim their kingdoms, and master builders raced to stay ahead of increasingly deadly siege weapons. Witness Fulknera, the Black Falcon of Anjou, bankrupting his treasury to build the first great stone keeps. Stand with Philip II as he revolutionizes warfare through architectural standardization, creating a network of royal castles that transforms France from a fragmented collection of territories into a unified kingdom. Experience the terror and wonder as crusaders return with new siege technologies that render centuries of defensive thinking obsolete. From the desperate timber towers of 1015 to the buried artillery fortresses of 1500, this is the story of how European civilization literally built itself, one stone at a time. These weren't just military installations but centers of power, culture, and identity that shaped the landscape and the people who lived within their shadows. See how Japanese earthquake-resistant wooden castles and Chinese continental-scale fortifications compare to Europe's unique approach to fortress architecture. Discover why some castles required only 20 soldiers and a pack of dogs to defend, while others needed garrisons of hundreds. Learn how the invention of gunpowder didn't just change warfare. It ended a 1,000-year architectural tradition and transformed fortresses into palaces. This is history told through the voices of the builders, defenders, and visionaries who created monuments that still capture our imagination 8 centuries later. Every tower tells a story. Every wall holds secrets of medieval ambition, ingenuity, and the eternal human drive to build something greater than ourselves. Stones of Power, an hour-long journey through European castle history. A narrative exploration spanning 5 centuries of medieval fortress evolution. Prologue, The Seeds of Stone. Picture Europe in the dying light of the 9th century. The great empire of Charlemagne lies fractured, its pieces scattered like shards of broken pottery across a continent in chaos. From the frozen fjords of the north come Viking longships, their dragon prows cutting through morning mist. From the east, Hungarian horsemen thunder across the plains. From the south, Saracen raiders strike like lightning from the Mediterranean. In this world of constant threat, where king's authority barely extends beyond his own courtyard, desperate lords began to pile earth into mounds and crown them with wooden towers. They had no way of knowing they were laying the foundation stones, literally, of a 1,000-year architectural legacy that would define the very image of medieval Europe. The word itself tells the story, from the Latin castrum meaning fortified place, gradually evolving through castellum, simply meaning village, until it transformed into something entirely new. No longer just any fortified settlement, but the residence of power itself. The castle was born not from grand design, but from desperate necessity. Chapter 1. Earth and Timber, the Motte Revolution. The year is 1015. Brother Marcus, a monk chronicling the times, watches from his scriptorium window as peasants toil on a strange artificial hill rising from the valley floor. In just 3 months, they have created what appears to be a small mountain topped with a wooden tower that seems to scrape the very clouds. This is the Motte and Bailey Castle, humanity's first systematic answer to the chaos of the post-Carolingian world. The engineering is brilliantly simple. A cone-shaped mound, 30 meters wide at the base, tapering to 10 meters at the summit, rising between 6 and 12 meters high. The slope, carefully calculated at 35 to 55 degrees, is steep enough to exhaust attackers but gentle enough for defenders to navigate. Upon this artificial mountain sits a wooden keep, 15 to 25 meters tall, visible for miles in every direction. It serves as watchtower, last refuge, and most importantly, symbol. Below spreads the bailey, a courtyard enclosed by ditches, earthen ramparts, and wooden palisades. Here blacksmiths hammer iron, bakers tend ovens, and stable boys curry horses. This is not just a fortress, it is a world unto itself. Lord William de Montfort stands atop his newly completed motte, surveying lands that 3 months ago seemed indefensible. His wooden tower may lack the grandeur of Roman stone, but it required no master masons, no quarries, no years of construction. His peasants dug the earth from the very ditches that now protect them, creating both obstacle and elevation in one stroke of genius. The Motte and Bailey spreads across Europe like wildfire. In England, the Normans will plant over 500 of them after 1066. Each represents the same story. A local lord claiming his piece of the fragmenting world, literally raising himself above his neighbors and subjects. Yet these wooden towers carry the seeds of their own destruction. Brother Marcus records in his chronicle the night Lord William's keep burns, set ablaze by flaming arrows. As the lord and his family flee into the darkness, the monk understands what every castle builder of the age is learning. Wood burns, earth erodes, and timber rots. The future belongs to stone. Chapter 2. The Stone Revolution, Fulk-Nerra's Legacy. Enter Fulk-Nerra, the Black Falcon of Anjou, a man who will reshape the face of medieval warfare through sheer audacity and unlimited ambition. When he inherits the county of Anjou at 17 in 987, he inherits not just lands but enemies on every border. His solution is as bold as it is expensive. He will build in stone. The year is 1010. Master mason Guillaume surveys the site for what will become Lox, one of the first great stone keeps of the medieval age. Unlike the earth and timber constructions rising everywhere else, this will be a statement carved from living rock. 25 meters by 15 at the base, 37 meters tall, its walls 3 meters thick. This is architecture as warfare, engineering as intimidation. The construction transforms the very landscape. Quarrymen work the local limestone, their hammers ringing from dawn to dusk. Ox carts lumber along muddy tracks, carrying dressed stones that will outlast empires. The cost is staggering, equivalent to years of the Count's entire revenue. But Fulk-Nerra understands what his wooden tower contemporaries do not. Permanence has a power all its own. Within the keep, the architecture tells the story of medieval life. The ground floor, partially buried, serves as granary and strongroom, the economic heart where the lord's wealth lies stored. Above, the great hall where Fulk holds court, receives homage, and displays the power that his stone walls project across the countryside. Higher still, the private chambers where the Lord's family lives, and at the very top, a chapel where God's blessing sanctifies earthly power. But Fulk-Nerra is building more than fortresses. He is creating a system. 30 castles will bear his mark across Anjou and beyond, each one a piece in a grand strategic puzzle. Together, they project his authority across hundreds of square kilometers, creating a network of stone that binds territory to lord in ways the old wooden towers never could. The impact ripples across Europe. Other lords, seeing Fulk stone towers standing proud while their own wooden keeps rot and burn, begin their own stone campaigns. The arms race has begun, not just of walls and weapons, but of architectural ambition. Each lord must build bigger, stronger, more impressive than his neighbors, or risk being seen as weak, outdated, irrelevant. Yet for all their strength, these early stone keeps reveal the limitations of their age. The square design, so easy to construct, creates deadly blind spots at the corners. Attackers can shelter against the walls, dig tunnels beneath the foundations, or simply wait for time and weather to find the weak points in the masonry. The future will demand new shapes, new strategies, new solutions carved in stone. Chapter 3. The Royal Revolution, Philip II Blueprint. The year is 1180. Philip Augustus, soon to be called Philip II, ascends the throne of France to find himself ruler of a kingdom barely larger than modern-day Paris suburbs. To the west, the Plantagenet kings of England hold Normandy, Anjou, Maine, and Touraine, more than half of what should be French soil. To the east and south, powerful dukes and counts rule their territories as independent kingdoms. Philip looks out from his palace windows and sees not a unified realm, but a patchwork of rival powers, each secure behind their own castle walls. Philip's solution is revolutionary. He will not merely build castles, he will systematize them. Working with his master masons, he develops what historians will call the Philippian model, a standardized design that can be adapted to any site while maintaining consistent defensive capabilities. Master Jacques de Cambrai stands in the muddy courtyard of what will become the Louvre, not yet a palace for kings, but the ultimate expression of Philip's military vision. The design is elegantly simple yet devastatingly effective, a square enclosure, 78 by 72 meters, protected by walls 6 meters thick. At each corner and midpoint, circular towers rise like stone sentinels, their curved surfaces designed to deflect the stone balls hurled by the new siege engines returning with crusading armies from the Holy Land. At the heart of the fortress rises the Great Tower, 31 meters of solid stone expressing royal authority in its most concentrated form. Unlike the keeps of previous generations, this tower serves as much symbol as refuge. Its very existence proclaims that the King of France has returned to claim what is rightfully his. The construction process reveals the sophisticated organization behind Philip's castle program. Quarries at Bagnols provide the limestone, their output calculated to supply not just the Louvre but dozens of royal fortresses. Networks of carpenters, masons, and laborers move from site to site, carrying standardized techniques and measurements across the expanding royal domain. What emerges is not just individual castles, but a comprehensive system of defense and control. Yet the genius lies not merely in standardization but in adaptation. At Dodane, the Philippian model adapts to a hilltop site. At Chinon, it incorporates existing fortifications. Each castle shares the same basic DNA: circular towers, archer positions, standardized gatehouses, while responding to local conditions and strategic requirements. The circular towers represent perhaps the greatest innovation. Master Jacques explains to his apprentices how curved walls deflect catapult stones that would shatter against flat surfaces. More importantly, the design eliminates blind spots, allowing defenders to cover every approach with crossbow fire. The towers themselves become firing platforms, with arrow loops positioned at different levels to create overlapping fields of fire. The impact extends far beyond military effectiveness. These royal castles project a new image of kingship itself. Where feudal lords built to defend their own territories, Philip builds to reclaim and reunify France. His standardized towers become symbols of royal authority, visible proof that the age of independent barons is ending and the age of royal power has begun. The English respond with their own castle-building programs. Richard the Lionheart pours a fortune into Chateau Gallet in Normandy, boasting he could hold it if its walls were made of butter. Henry II strengthens Dover and other coastal fortresses. The result is an architectural arms race that transforms the landscape of medieval warfare. But perhaps the most significant innovation is administrative. Philip's castles are not merely military installations, but centers of royal government. Each one anchors a network of royal officials, bailiffs, seneschals, and provosts, who extend royal justice and taxation into previously autonomous regions. The stone walls that keep enemies out also keep royal authority in. Chapter 4: Crusader Innovations and the Art of Active Defense. The year is 1191. Sir Geoffrey de Montfort returns from the Third Crusade to his ancestral lands in Normandy, his mind still reeling from the wonders and horrors he has witnessed. At Acre and Anche, he has seen siege engines the like of which no European battlefield has ever known. The great trebuchets of Saladin's engineers, capable of hurling stones weighing more than a man across impossible distances. The sophisticated counterweight systems that make Roman ballistas look like children's toys. More disturbing still, he has seen these weapons in action against European fortifications. The massive walls of Acre, built on the same principles as his own family castle, reduced to rubble by sustained bombardment. The realization comes like a cold dawn. The defensive assumptions that have governed European castle building for 2 centuries are now obsolete. Master Raymond, the master mason Geoffrey summons to redesign his castle, listens with growing excitement as the knight describes the architectural wonders of the Byzantine and Islamic worlds. Multiple concentric walls, each higher than the last. Towers shaped like arrowheads to deflect projectiles. Most intriguingly, galleries built into the very walls themselves, allowing defenders to move unseen from tower to tower while raining death on attackers below. The result of their collaboration becomes Chateau Galad, Richard the Lionheart's masterpiece of military architecture. Perched on its cliff above the Seine, the castle represents a quantum leap in defensive thinking. Gone is the simple square enclosure of earlier generations. In its place rises a complex of 3 separate wards, each designed to trap and destroy attackers who breach the previous line. The innermost ward showcases the most revolutionary innovation: stone machicolations. Where previous castles relied on temporary wooden galleries that could be burned by attackers, Galad's walls sprout permanent stone overhangs pierced with murder holes. Defenders can drop stones, boiling oil, or Greek fire on attackers while remaining completely protected themselves. The keep itself abandons the traditional square or circular design for something entirely new: a series of curved surfaces that deflect projectiles while eliminating every possible blind spot. Master Raymond calls it the scalloped edge, walls that flow like water, presenting no flat surface for catapult stones to strike squarely. Yet the true innovation lies in the integration of active and passive defense. Earlier castles relied primarily on their strength, thick walls, deep ditches, and height to keep enemies at bay. Galad's design assumes that attackers will reach the walls and even breach them. The genius lies in what happens next. Each ward becomes a killing ground for the next. Attackers who take the outer bailey find themselves trapped in a narrow space commanded by the middle ward's towers. Those who breach the middle ward discover that they have gained nothing but a more exposed position under the guns of the inner keep. At every stage, the defense remains active, mobile, and deadly. The influence spreads rapidly across the Crusader kingdoms and back to Europe. The English adopt the new techniques for Dover Castle, creating the most sophisticated fortress in Britain. French lords incorporate machicolations and active defense systems into their own rebuilding projects. Even the German emperors, traditionally focused on their Italian campaigns, begin investing in more sophisticated fortifications. Master Raymond's innovations extend beyond mere walls and towers to the very conception of castle warfare. His designs assume that sieges will be won or lost not by passive endurance, but by the ability to strike back at attackers. Arrow loops are repositioned to create interlocking fields of fire. Towers are designed as firing platforms rather than mere refuges. The castle becomes not just a shell to hide behind, but a weapon in its own right. The psychological impact proves as important as the physical. Attackers approaching Galad or its imitators face not just walls and towers but visible evidence that every step forward brings them into more deadly peril. The architecture itself becomes a form of psychological warfare, promising that even successful assault will exact a terrible price. Chapter 5: Border Fortresses and the Psychology of Power. High in the Pyrenees, where eagles nest among the clouds and the very air seems thin with altitude, stands Peripertus, a name that means pierced stone. The year is 1242, and master builder Arnor surveys a fortress that seems to have grown from the living rock itself. 300 meters of fortification running along a razor-sharp ridge, 500 meters above the valley floor, accessible only by a path so narrow that two men cannot walk abreast. This is not warfare as previous generations understood it. The garrison consists of 20-foot soldiers and a pack of hunting dogs. 20 men to hold a fortress that cost a fortune to build and commands a vista stretching from the Mediterranean to the peaks of the Pyrenees. The mathematics make no military sense until one understands that Peripotis is not really a military installation at all. King Louis IX, later Saint Louis, purchased this and similar fortresses not to fight wars but to win them before they began. Each castle perched on its impossible crag serves as a stone declaration. This is France. Here royal authority begins, and here it will be defended to the last stone. The psychological effect proves devastating. Enemy armies approaching the frontiers see these eagle nest fortresses long before they reach the actual border. Each one poses the same silent question. If the French crown can build such wonders on these impossible peaks, what resources, what determination, what sheer royal will awaits in the valleys beyond? Master Arnaud understands this as he directs the construction of Peripotis Upper Castle. The logistics alone stagger the imagination. Every stone must be hauled up paths that wind around precipices where a single misstep means death. Water must be collected from rainfall and stored in cisterns carved from solid rock. Yet the result justifies every exhausted hour. A fortress that appears to float between earth and heaven, proclaiming royal power through sheer impossibility. The economic calculation reveals the deeper strategy. These border fortresses cost more to build than entire armies cost to maintain, yet they eliminate the need for those armies. Enemies who might risk battle against conventional forces think twice when faced with the prospect of reducing fortresses that seem to mock the very notion of assault. Carcassonne represents the ultimate expression of this psychological warfare. Rising like a vision from the plains of Languedoc, its double walls and 50 towers create what appears to be an entire city dedicated to war. The reality is more subtle. Carcassonne is theater, architecture is propaganda, designed to convince potential enemies that resistance is futile. The construction details reveal the investment in this psychological effect. Dressed stone throughout, despite the enormous cost. Towers deliberately oversized, with arrow loops 2 and 3 meters long, far larger than necessary for actual defense. The builders understand that impressive architecture serves power better than merely functional architecture. Yet beneath the theater lies sophisticated military engineering. The double walls create a killing ground where attackers who breach the outer defenses find themselves trapped under fire from the inner ramparts. The towers, for all their ostentation, provide overlapping fields of fire that cover every approach. Carcassonne may be propaganda, but it is deadly propaganda. The border fortress strategy succeeds beyond Louis IX's wildest hopes. The crown's authority extends not just to these mountain peaks but far beyond them, as neighboring powers calculate the cost of challenging a kingdom that built such wonders on its frontiers. The stones themselves become ambassadors, negotiating from positions of overwhelming architectural strength. Chapter 6: Comfort, Culture, and the Domestic Castle. The year is 1280. Lady Eleanor de Montclair oversees the renovation of her family's keep, transforming what was once a stark military installation into something approaching a comfortable home. The old square tower, built by her grandfather for war, now sprouts large windows facing the protected courtyard. What were once arrow slits become gracious openings filled with colored glass that paints rainbow patterns on stone floors warmed by elaborate fireplaces. This transformation reflects a broader change in medieval life. The generation of constant private wars is ending, replaced by periods of relative peace under strengthened royal authority. Lords no longer sleep with weapons at hand, expecting siege at any moment. The castle's residential function, always present but subordinated to military needs, begins to take precedence. Master Hugh the Mason explains to Lady Eleanor the architectural innovations that make this comfort possible. The trilogy of medieval domestic space, aula, camera, Capella, evolves from simple necessity to sophisticated comfort. The great hall becomes not just a place to eat but a theater for the display of lordly magnificence. Tapestries warm stone walls while covering them with scenes of romance and adventure. Tables that once served purely functional meals now host elaborate banquets designed to impress visitors and reinforce social hierarchies. The camera, the private chamber, undergoes perhaps the greatest transformation. What began as a simple sleeping space for the lord and lady evolves into a complex of interconnected rooms. Private studies where accounts are kept and letters written. Wardrobes, literal rooms for clothing that demonstrate wealth through sheer volume of fine fabric. Solar chambers where ladies pursue the gentle arts of embroidery and music while enjoying the luxury of large windows and southern exposure. The chapel transforms from simple necessity to cultural center. Brother Thomas, the castle chaplain, maintains not just the spiritual needs of the household but an increasingly sophisticated library. Illuminated manuscripts copied by monastic scriptoriums find their way to castle libraries, where they join chronicles, romances, and practical treatises on everything from agriculture to astronomy. The castle becomes not just a residence and fortress, but a center of learning that rivals many monasteries. Water management reveals the sophisticated engineering behind domestic comfort. At Vincennes, the ultimate royal castle, a system of pipes brings spring water directly from sources 3 kilometers away. The precious liquid arrives under pressure thanks to careful elevation calculations, flowing to kitchens, baths, and private chambers through a distribution network that rivals Roman engineering. The attention to hygiene surprises even contemporary visitors. Private baths, supplied with hot water from elaborate heating systems, become standard features in the finest castles. Latrines, instead of simple privies, develop into sophisticated waste management systems that channel sewage away from living spaces through carefully designed drainage systems. Yet comfort never entirely displaces military function. The finest castle windows still employ iron grills that can be quickly secured in case of attack. Fireplaces, for all their decorative elaboration, are positioned to avoid creating weak points in defensive walls. Even the most gracious castle entrance maintains its gateways, portcullis, and murder holes, comfort balanced always with the reality that peaceful times might not last. The result is a uniquely medieval synthesis, buildings that serve simultaneously as fortresses and homes, military installations and cultural centers, expressions of power and comfort. The castle of the late 13th century embodies the contradictions and achievements of medieval civilization at its height, sophisticated, comfortable, and deadly in equal measure. Chapter 7: Gunpowder and the End of Stone. The morning mist still clings to the walls of Harfleur when the first cannon fires. The year is 1415, and Master Gunner Jean-Baptiste adjusts the elevation of his bombard while English forces under Henry V prepare for what will become one of history's most famous sieges. The stone bull, no larger than a man's head but weighing more than 2 men combined, strikes the castle's curtain wall with a sound like thunder. When the dust settles, a crack runs from foundation to battlement, a hairline fracture that represents the death of 1,000 years of military architecture. Brother Francois, chronicling the siege from within the castle, records his amazement at these new weapons. Unlike the great trebuchets that required dozens of men and hours to load, these bronze tubes belch fire and stone with mechanical regularity. More disturbing still, the accuracy improves with each shot as the gunners learn to calculate powder charges and adjust their aim. What once took months of battering with catapults now requires mere days of sustained bombardment. The evolution of artillery proves relentless. Early cannons, crude affairs that killed their own crews as often as the enemy, give way to sophisticated weapons cast by master founders who understand metallurgy as well as any bellmaker. Stone cannonballs yield to iron shot that shatters masonry instead of merely cracking it. By the mid-15th century, siege trains can reduce walls that took decades to build in a matter of hours. At Bonneguil Castle in New Aquitaine, Lord Berenger de Roquefort attempts to adapt medieval architecture to artillery warfare. The result, built between 1445 and 1482, represents the last desperate evolution of the traditional castle. Massive walls, sometimes more than 10 meters thick, are designed to absorb cannon shot rather than deflect it. More than 100 cannon ports pierce the fortifications, turning the castle itself into a gigantic artillery platform. The keep abandons its traditional circular or square design for an almond shape that presents minimal target area to enemy gunners. A massive barbican, essentially a fortified artillery position, protects the main entrance. Most innovative of all, the castle incorporates a boulevard, a low-lying outer fortification designed specifically for cannon warfare, with firing positions built into the moats themselves. Yet even these sophisticated adaptations cannot overcome the fundamental mathematics of gunpowder warfare. Master Guillaume de la Tour, surveying the ruins of a castle destroyed by artillery, calculates the grim equation. Walls thick enough to resist cannon shot require foundations deeper than most castle sites can accommodate. Height, the traditional advantage of medieval fortification, becomes a liability when cannon can topple towers with precision fire. The fortress of Salses, built by Spanish engineers at the end of the 15th century, represents the logical conclusion of this arms race. Buried in the earth rather than rising above it, with walls 14 meters thick and towers that barely emerge above the protective banks of earth, Salses resembles nothing so much as a modern bunker. Gone are the soaring walls and proud towers that defined medieval architecture. In their place crouch squat, functional structures designed purely to house artillery and survive artillery attack. The psychological impact proves as devastating as the physical destruction. Castles that once projected invincible strength now appear as monuments to obsolete technology. Lords who once felt secure behind walls their grandfathers built discover that their fortifications have become death traps, unable to resist modern siegecraft but too expensive to abandon or rebuild. The economic calculation completes the military transformation. Artillery capable of reducing medieval fortifications costs less than the fortifications themselves. A single cannon battery, operated by a dozen men, can accomplish what once required armies. The feudal system, based on the military value of heavily armored cavalry and impregnable castles, dissolves as gunpowder democratizes warfare. Master Cannon founder Pierre de Montclair explains the new reality to his noble patrons. The age of passive defense is ending. Fortifications of the future must be designed not to withstand attack but to deliver attack. The castle, conceived as a defensive shell, evolves toward the artillery fort, a platform for projecting force rather than merely resisting it. Yet the transition proves neither immediate nor complete. Throughout the 16th century, hybrid fortifications attempt to combine traditional castle architecture with artillery-age modifications. The result is often architecturally confused. Medieval towers sprouting cannon ports, ancient walls thickened with earth-filled bastions, proud keeps reduced to ammunition storage. Chapter 8, Renaissance Transformation, From Fortress to Palace. Francis I of France stands in the great courtyard of Chambord, watching Italian craftsmen install the final pieces of the famous double-spiral staircase. The year is 1540, and the king surveys a building that represents the complete transformation of the medieval castle. Where once rose walls designed to keep enemies out, now stands a palace meant to welcome the world, or at least the world that matters in Renaissance France. The defensive features remain: battlements, a central keep, even machicolations, but their function has transformed entirely. These are no longer military installations but decorative elements, architectural quotes from a martial past that now serves purely aesthetic purposes. The battlements that once sheltered archers now provide pleasant vantage points for court ladies to observe hunting parties. The keep that once served as last refuge now houses the king's most private apartments, its height proclaiming royal magnificence rather than military necessity. Leonardo da Vinci, in his final years as Francis's guest, contributes to this architectural revolution not through defensive innovations, but through concepts of harmony, proportion, and mechanical wonder. The double spiral staircase that bears his influence allows courtiers to ascend and descend without meeting, a solution to problems of court protocol that would have been incomprehensible to medieval castle builders focused on military efficiency. The contrast with earlier castles proves stark in every detail. Where medieval builders prioritized thick walls and narrow windows, Renaissance architects create vast glazed openings that flood interiors with light. Where military necessity dictated the placement of every element, Renaissance design follows principles of classical harmony and humanist philosophy imported from Italy. Yet the transformation serves political purposes as sophisticated as any military strategy. Chambord and its Loire Valley companions project royal power through beauty rather than intimidation. Foreign ambassadors, arriving to negotiate with the French crown, find themselves overwhelmed not by impregnable fortifications, but by artistic magnificence that suggests unlimited royal resources devoted to pleasure rather than war. The domestic arrangements reflect changing social realities. Where medieval castles housed extended military households prepared for siege, Renaissance chateaux accommodate elaborate courts dedicated to ceremony, entertainment, and the display of royal favor. Private apartments multiply and elaborate, creating spaces for the intimate life of monarchy while maintaining the grand spaces necessary for public ceremony. Chapter 9: Destruction and Romantic Revival. Cardinal Richelieu surveys the ruins of yet another demolished castle, his satisfaction evident as he watches workmen systematically destroy walls that once defied royal authority. The year is 1630, and Louis XIII, chief minister, pursues a deliberate policy of castle destruction designed to eliminate the architectural foundations of feudal resistance. "These stones," he declares, "have sheltered too many rebels against royal authority." The wars of religion have demonstrated the continued military utility of medieval fortifications. Protestant and Catholic nobles have used their ancestral castles as bases for private armies that terrorize the countryside and defy royal power. The solution, as Richelieu sees it, requires not just political submission but physical destruction of the military infrastructure that makes rebellion possible. The demolition process reveals the economic importance these buildings once held. Stones from destroyed castles provide building material for new construction projects, from churches to bridges to simple peasant cottages. Elements of military architecture find new life in civilian construction. A carved doorway gracing a merchant's house, a defensive tower converted to a dovecote, ramparts transformed into garden terraces. The French Revolution completes what royal policy began. Revolutionary authorities view castles not merely as military threats but as symbols of aristocratic oppression. Systematic destruction campaigns eliminate hundreds of medieval fortifications, while others are abandoned to serve as convenient quarries for local construction needs. Yet destruction breeds its own romance. By the 19th century, moss-covered ruins evoke not fear but poetic melancholy. Writers like Chateaubriand discover in medieval remains a Gothic sensibility that speaks to Romantic sensibilities. The castle, no longer a military reality, becomes a literary metaphor for vanished grandeur and the inexorable passage of time. The Restoration movement that follows attempts to recover not historical accuracy but Romantic idealization. Viollet Leduc's reconstruction of Pierrefonds creates not a medieval castle but a 19th century fantasy of what medieval castles should have been, more perfect, more complete, more dramatically Gothic than the originals ever were. Chapter 10: Global Perspectives and Eternal Fascination. While European lords built their stone fortresses, other civilizations developed their own architectural responses to warfare and power. In Japan, the great castles of the Sengo period, Himeji, Matsumoto, Osaka, employed sophisticated wooden construction techniques that allowed their multi-story towers to flex with earthquakes while projecting imperial authority across feudal domains. Unlike their European counterparts, Japanese castle builders placed supreme emphasis on the aesthetic integration of fortification with landscape, creating defensive installations that served simultaneously as military bases and artistic statements. Chinese fortress architecture took yet another path, emphasizing massive earthworks and strategic positioning over individual strongholds. The Great Wall itself represents a continental-scale approach to defensive architecture, while imperial palaces like the Forbidden City combine ceremonial grandeur with defensive capability through layout and symbolic design rather than purely military engineering. These global perspectives illuminate what made European castle architecture unique: the combination of individual lordly authority, stone construction technology, and the particular military pressures of medieval European warfare. Where Japanese castles served primarily as regional administrative centers and Chinese fortifications protected entire civilizations, European castles embodied the personal power of individual nobles within a fragmented political landscape. Today, centuries after their military function ended, castles continue to shape human imagination. They appear in films as settings for fantasy and romance, in theme parks as symbols of wonder, in tourism as connections to historical identity. The architectural forms developed for medieval warfare have become universal symbols of power, romance, and historical grandeur. Perhaps this enduring fascination reflects something deeper than mere nostalgia. In an age of global communication and standardized architecture, medieval castles represent a time when buildings expressed individual personality, when architecture embodied political authority, and when human creativity faced the ultimate test of survival in stone. Epilogue: Stones that speak. The sun sets over Carcassonne, its rays painting the ancient stones the color of blood and gold. Tourists photograph the battlements while their children play in courtyards that once echoed with the clash of steel and the thunder of siege engines. The stones themselves remain largely unchanged from the day Master Jean de Brienne completed the final tower, but their meaning has transformed completely. These monuments to medieval ambition now serve purposes their builders could never have imagined. They anchor historical identity for modern nations, provide economic foundation for entire regions through tourism, and offer tangible connections to centuries when Europe was young and its political structure was still forming in stone and mortar. The castle story mirrors the story of European civilization itself, born from chaos, shaped by ambition, perfected through competition, transformed by technology, and ultimately transcending its original purpose to become something both more and less than its creators intended. In their rise and fall, their architectural evolution and functional transformation, castles embody 5 centuries of human creativity applied to the fundamental challenges of power, security, and identity. They remind us that architecture is never merely functional, that buildings shape the societies that create them even as they reflect those societies' values and capabilities. The medieval lords who raised these stones sought immediate military advantage, but they created monuments to human aspiration that continue to inspire wonder 8 centuries later. As night falls over Europe's ancient fortifications, their floodlit walls stand as testimony to a simple truth. Human beings have always sought to build something greater than themselves, something that will outlast their brief lives and speak their names to future generations. In this, at least, the castle builders succeeded beyond their boldest dreams. This concludes our hour-long journey through the architectural evolution of European castles, from the first desperate wooden towers of the 10th century to the romantic ruins and scholarly reconstructions that define our modern understanding of the medieval world. Through stone and mortar, these monuments continue to tell the story of European civilization at its most creative and ambitious.